All right, we are back for part 2 with our Mr. Smith building inspector.
Hello.
And we've kind of broken protocol here. There's no intro song. There's no green book. There's no OBC talk.
But there is something we missed.
What? And we missed
Mark from Skylux. And he's given us his beautiful home to change the industry and educate us. He didn't give it to us, but...
I want the bike.
Dude, that bike is moving all the time. You know he's ripping up catwalks up the street.
No, thanks very much, Mark. Everyone follow Skylux Roofing on Instagram. He's also on Facebook. He's also on LinkedIn.
But this isn't just about us, giving me a shout out. Like, if you follow this guy, he's doing some amazing stuff.
Some insane work.
Like,
insane work.
He's taking it to another level. Like, I got roofer buddies that are like, why do I want to show my roofing stuff? And I'm like, you better watch Skylux and see what this guy's doing, man. Because not only him, but his crew is killer, man.
Solid.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mark, so much. And let's get back into building inspecting and building code.
Mr. Smith.
Mr. Smith. So he brought all of his documentations. He brought the OBC. He brought what was that other book he brought there, Mr.
It's just
Smith?
a different version of the building code.
It's just a different version.
Well,
wow.
Can we talk about that? Why is it still 2012 if so many bylaws are changing?
They've just been adding amendments to the 2012 building code.
So how do you get that upgraded then?
You can, again, it's online.
Download it.
Yeah,
no, I know, but I want to know how to do this. If I'm someone that doesn't know how to do this, how do I do this?
You need a computer to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, you can go online. I don't have a website handy. You can search Building Code Ontario. I think Publications Ontario has them. There are other websites you can get them through. Orderline is another website. I don't know if it's .com or what, but they supply a lot of these books. They actually have illustrated guides too, which are very helpful. The pictures aren't part of the building code, but it's them helping you understand how to apply that code. Yeah, those are ways to get it.
Can I ask you something? Do you pay attention to licensed contractors?
No,
I always show them my driver's license.
No. But I mean, like, Ontario, say Mississauga or a Toronto license.
Licenses are municipal, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just asking.
Not
like, is there
provincial.
anything like that you look for?
No, I don't check that. So if you have a license to be a contractor, yeah, I believe that's through the city you work in or live in. I actually was asked this question from a plumber in the past couple of weeks. He says, hey, when you go to sites, do you ask the plumber for his license? And I said, no, sorry, that's not what I'm inspecting. I'm inspecting the work. As far as I know, the Ontario College of Trades, they're the ones who deal with that. If I think they're getting changed into a different ministry or something. I don't know exactly what's going on. As far as I know, deal with licenses and things like that. I don't inspect. There's nothing that tells me I have to ask a plumber or electrician if he's licensed. I'm inspecting the work that's being done.
I don't really feel that anyone should be upset or hate an inspector. Actually, I think it's a pretty glorious job, and I don't think that we should be focusing on the other things. I want to talk about the education that you need to become an inspector, or how to change the next generation of inspectors to get more passionate people. Making sure that our homes are safe, our contractors are smart, our homeowners are educated. What are some of the processes that you have to go to become an engineer? Or engineer. Yeah. What are some of the processes to become an engineer?
Well, I think those questions were probably asked or answered on your last podcast.
Sorry, I still had that in my head. No, what are some of the qualifications you need to have to become a city inspector?
Again, I can't speak for every municipality. There are minimum requirements just in Ontario generally. And again, that's in the building code. If you buy these giant binders...
I'm telling you, I'm reading this thing next year.
And
Dude, this might change your life.
I'm telling you.
You go to Division C, it'll show you qualifications for different people involved in construction, designers, inspectors. For people who are still listening from the last one, I mentioned there's exams through the government that I have to write. There's a bunch of different categories. It looks like there's 12 different categories of registration listed for different types of the building code.
Wait, did you say that there's different sections for different designers and architects and contractors?
There's different requirements. So not necessarily an out of date. There's a registered code agency, I believe is the term. Those are effectively private building inspectors. I don't think we have any of those in Ontario, but I could be wrong.
But they're in the book.
It's mentioned in the book. So there are qualifications that they are required to have. They're very similar to what I'm required to have. I don't think that's used in Ontario, but I've only worked in a couple different municipalities, so I don't know. But if you go to this book, without reading it all off to you guys, there's a bunch of different categories that you have to pass a written exam to be able to inspect, design, maybe not design, do the plans review. There's a bunch of exceptions. So certain things you do need to have these qualifications to design, but not everything. And in terms of literal education, there's no actual education requirement. I know that sounds kind of silly. Each municipality will kind of set their own standard of what they're looking for in an inspector.
So you could have a grade 12, and if you have common sense, you've been in construction and you know it really well, and you spent the time learning, you could pretty much get into one of these divisions.
You could, yeah, it is possible. Again, it depends on the municipality. Everybody has to start somewhere, right? You can't apply to the job and just get experience from nowhere. You got to start at ground zero, right?
I got to ask you, Mr. Smith. It's like saying that.
You like saying that, eh?
I got to ask you. So you were in construction before inspections.
Yeah.
What made you get into inspections? Why'd you leave construction to get into inspections?
Yeah, good question. So I initially started taking some online and in-person building code courses through a college that was near me. I initially did it just to help me learn for the job I was doing with carpenter, doing renovations and additions and things. I felt, the more knowledge I had, the more money my boss could pay me, right? So I started doing that. And then I realized...
You learned quickly that's not...
You know what? and this is what I'm talking about. If employees behaved like you're proving to your employer that you're worth more. Mm-hmm. Most people are saying, this is what I'm worth. And that's what the difference is with someone like you. That's brilliant. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no problem. So I initially took them just to better educate myself. And then it wasn't long after taking a few courses, other guys in the company were calling me, hey, how high does this handrail need to be? It's
wicked.
And
That's true.
It kind of became like a little bit fun.
A joke?
No. No, it turned in my career. So I don't know. You tell me if it's a joke.
No. At the beginning, it might have been like a little bit of a joke, but then it turns into something very serious.
Yeah. I tried to better myself. I thought if I knew more, I would make more money, a bigger asset to my boss. I did a few courses. I wrote some of the exams. And then I realized after talking to some of the instructors who were building inspectors as well, I asked them to say, hey, what do I need to do to get this job? And they went through it. They told me some of the things I just told you. You got to pass these courses. Every municipality is different. They might want architectural background or engineering or site experience in a different trade. They kind of set that standard, but the minimum requirements are in the building code.
So they were kind of scaring you a little bit, but it was easier than you thought.
It wasn't necessarily easier, but it was difficult to actually figure out how to do it.
It's a lot of footwork.
Yeah, it's hard. I don't know what comes up when you Google how to become a building inspector, but I found figuring that out to be a little difficult. So, if you guys want to hear anything about that, I could talk a little bit about
Sure.
that.
It's like, I want to get the misconceptions. Because you got your ideas of when you get on a job site of what we think of you.
No, actually, he didn't really tell us that. Why don't you tell us, what do you think of contractors when you come on site?
Yeah, we did get into it a little bit. If I come onto a site and it's super messy, as in, blocks of wood, food wrappers on the ground. Say it's a new home, I'm going to do framing inspection. Usually framing's done. It should be because I'm there. So there shouldn't really be scraps of wood all over the place. There shouldn't be pieces of plywood covering holes in the floor, things like that. I'm human. I'm going to form my own opinion of you. And what I see in front of me is what I'm going to base it on. So if we haven't met before and I come to a site and it looks disgusting.
It's a first impression.
Yeah, exactly. Same with your clients. You're going to invite your client over to your project. Hey, this is a house I'm working on. You want to come see it? And it's full of garbage. They're not going to think too much highly of you either.
I think contractors should make the effort to build a brand to impress their clients. And I think they should extend that effort for the subtrades, for the inspectors, and for the engineers, and for everybody that's involved in that construction
No, you're
process.
right. Because when you say build a brand, people are building brands, but they're building this Instagram brand or this Facebook brand or
that's the fake
this
brands.
media brand. Really, the brand is carried on to the real site, how it's run, how it's managed, how it's organized, how, all the important things.
What were you going to say, Mr. Smith? I'm sorry, we interrupted you. So you were going to tell us a little bit more about...
Yeah, about how to become an inspector. So again, I mentioned I found it a little difficult. The basic process, and this is Ontario, sorry for people who are listening that don't live here. You need what's called a BCIN, Building Code Identification Number. That's given to you by the government. You just apply. They give you this number. Now you're registered.
Is it one test, one exam?
No, you don't need an exam just to get that number. It just registers you. So you have a number and it says Mr. Smith is number 105-6.
Is that not the same number as an architect?
Yeah, because I would hire someone with a BN number and they could do small point loads or small...
BCIN.
Yeah, a designer, like I mentioned, a designer would have that same qualification, the BCIN.
Wow.
Well, hang on a sec. So You could just apply for this number?
You can apply for the number. It doesn't do anything until you get qualifications
And how do you get the qualifications?
by writing the exams in the
Got
different
it. I
parts.
know
of the
there's an exam somewhere.
Manny's gonna write a test.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to write my BCI.
You know what? I might take it with you.
No, you're not. Stay away from me.
So you can apply for that BCIN number. You just get assigned a number that just registers you. It doesn't give you the power to do anything. It's like a learner's permit, but you can't even drive.
What's the fee behind that? Do you know offhand?
I don't know if there's a fee just to get the number.
This is a city, man. There's a fee attached to everything.
You're right.
So there probably is a small fee. There's a fee to be registered, and I'm sorry, I don't know the number. It's
Okay, no
not a
problem.
lot. It's like $100 to $200, I believe. Each exam costs, the last time I checked, $150 to write. Like I said, there's 12 different categories. The municipality will decide what qualifications they want you to have because they're going to be telling you what they want you to inspect. Like if I go to a house, some municipalities, like where I work, we have a plumbing and HVAC inspector. He'll do all the houses and all the commercial stuff, and I'll do the structural and the rest of that stuff. If I have the qualifications, there's, for example, for a house, there's house is a qualification. I don't want to go into all the crazy details, but that will allow you to inspect most things with a house. There's also structural, small buildings, large buildings, plumbing, house, building services. It goes on and on. But once you write all those, you're qualified from an inspector's point of view to inspect those things.
How many exams are we talking about here? Like how many
Well, like I
qualifications?
mentioned, it depends on what the municipality wants you to inspect, right? So there's 12 different categories, but some of them include like on-site sewage. Where you guys work predominantly Toronto, I can't imagine you have any on-site sewage like tile beds and things like that, right? So it's probably not a qualification that many City of Toronto inspectors need. Like I said, house, small buildings, large buildings.
Are we understaffed right now? Like I know that we were talking about, do we need inspectors to come out? Can't we do it online? Yeah. Are we understaffed right now for city inspectors?
It's on a city by city basis. So where I'm working, I think there are some openings, but
it's kind of like going for the fire department. You don't know which department you're going to go in, and it takes a while to get in, I guess.
Again, it depends on the city. If they have openings, then they'll try and fill them, but it depends on the workload. A lot of that stuff takes a long time to figure out, depending on the size of the city, right? If they're going off of last year's numbers because they have 200 inspectors, it might take a while for them to figure out, we're short-staffed. These guys are doing way more inspections than we think they should be, and we should hire more people. It depends on the budget that comes in for the city. There's a lot that goes on.
You were swinging a hammer at a point.
Yeah.
Do you miss it?
Yeah, a bit. I mean, there's a certain amount of like camaraderie that goes on. I'm sure a lot of your friends you've worked with, right? You're listening to music, making jokes, having a good time. The only time I'm interacting with my colleagues is for the time I'm in the office. The rest of the time I'm on site dealing with people like you, and I don't know, sometimes it's not all that fun.
Now, okay, Mr. Smith, I want to get into a little bit of, give us a couple of, I want to go through trades. I want to go through trades of a construction new build and give us a little bit of little mishaps that they may have done or mistakes, small minor
or
things.
what you'd like to see changed in that.
Yeah, or something, just anything. So if we start from the ground up, let's just get into footings and foundations. What are some of the things that the guys are doing that, sure, they meet code, they pass it, but it could be a little bit better improved wise? Like I guess, for example, with foundations, beat up forms that leave... Well, orange peels of veneer.
I see different, because I've done a lot of rebar. 8 out of 10 don't care to really measure in between the rebars, and then there's 2 that they want it right on the money. Like it can't be off 10 mils. One of the things we always worry about when we're tying rebar is I make jigs, like little blocks, and I will block in between on the inside row and the outside row. I'll constantly block. People are like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know what the inspector is going to say when he comes here, and I'm not going to retie this rebar.
At the foundation stage, I don't inspect for workmanship. There is a point where kind of workmanship crosses over into failure, like structurally. So if it's going to affect things that I'm actually inspecting, then I'll look at workmanship. I think at the foundation level, most people, they're doing fine. It would be nice if instead of damp proofing, maybe homes needed to be waterproofed or maybe better.
Ooh, that's
damp
a good
proof.
one. I mean, that.
Basements typically weren't designed as living spaces, but now they are.
Yeah.
So if we're going to dig a hole in the ground, it would be nice if it's all protected. It's not required to put to seal up the floor like
You're
you seal
right.
up the
A minimum
walls.
code to actually seal that whole bottom.
Yeah,
That's right.
I mean,
Well, code is what you spray.
yeah, there's a damp proofing membrane, whatever
it's
you
6
use.
mil. Yeah, or something.
Some sort of spray or roll on.
And drainage board,
And then, drainage layer.
and then a weeping tile, and that's
and then a
it.
weeping tile, gravel. Yeah. Damp proofing obviously is different than waterproofing.
What is the difference?
Kind of as literal as it sounds, waterproofing, to the best of my knowledge, is it will stop water from coming in at all. Damp proofing, you're just stopping, I guess, moisture, trying to stop it.
Wow.
Well, an iPhone 3, remember that one?
No,
That wasn't even
I had to
damp
flip.
proofed. A new
Okay, no,
iPhone
joking.
today is waterproof. There's a difference.
There's a huge difference.
Well, I'll even give you another one. Sony's.
No, but that's
the yellow radios.
All jokes aside, that is a huge difference.
So why aren't we making? But the code is not asking for that.
The code sets the minimum standards, right?
Yeah, so it's always-
So if you guys choose to tell your client, hey, let's do this instead, even though this is the minimum requirement, that's up to you and your clients, right? So like it's hard for in my opinion, the government to say build to this very high standard when that might put some people in a position where they can't afford a home because now
I've always said that.
these new homes cost way too much to build.
If we don't build to minimum standards, then there wouldn't be an industry. It would just be all high standards, so there'd be a certain percentage of the industry that could only work.
Yep.
Yeah, I always thought that minimum code always protected the developer and not the homeowner. Was it a cost or was it a cash grab? Like what was that? Why was it really enforced, the minimum code?
I'm not sure if I can answer that fully. I mean, they had to set standards at some point. I think there were fires happening, 100 years ago where these buildings didn't have adequate exits. People are dying. They didn't have
Those all make sense to me.
fire extinguishers.
Everything. Yeah.
So they started setting standards. I mean, I'm not involved obviously with the process of writing the code, but it would be hard pressed to tell people build this house that's going to cost you $800,000 to build versus this one that costs $400,000.
No, but you made a good point. Like we were talking about the coil just to collect heat and warm water. Why aren't we focusing more on, like you said, damp proofing or sealing the basements when we all know that 70% of the costs are pretty much coming from the basement, 35% of the problems are from the basement.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There has to be some reason why damp proofing was found to be acceptable. I couldn't tell you the answer though.
The cue ball.
Yeah.
Is that actually in the code? Because I was told it was in the code.
Yeah, it has to be a number 4. No, I'm just kidding.
No. What is it?
No,
It's a tennis ball.
No, it's not.
it just talks about a ball test, a ball that won't float. I don't think there's any actual diameter on it. I'm sorry. There's a standard that talks about ball tests, but I'm not as familiar. What I typically see is, cue ball of some sort.
White ball or black ball.
Yeah,
or
something.
Yeah.
I would see it before they throw it down the drain, so I know it's the same ball.
Oh my
coming
God,
out the
I'm
other.
such an idiot. I had a tennis ball in my plumbing box the whole time.
For that test? Dude, it's not a tennis ball, man. It's always been a cue ball, man, or some sort of
I
pool
used the tennis
ball.
ball just to make sure the pitch was
Here
good.
we go.
Yeah.
This
Something
is what
something
TV
that
rental
won't
shows
float.
teaches you, okay?
That's not true at all.
We're in the basement, so we're going. I know that I was told by an excavator to always leave steps for an inspector to go step down into the actual pit.
Yeah, I mean,
Otherwise, they won't enter it.
yeah, it seems like most, at least where I work, can't again speak for every municipality. It seems like most of them don't let their inspectors use ladders. They don't want them using it as a means to get from one level to the next. I know a number of years ago, an inspector had died on a job site. I don't know the details, but I know he fell after shortly using a ladder. Same what happened there a few years ago. The guys fell off the swing stage, right? On that high-rise building, and some of the fall arrest things started to change drastically. Cutting steps is good. Again, it depends on the person going. If it's wet and muddy, they might not go down those cut steps into the dirt. That's why you mentioned earlier, maybe it was off air, about people doing their inspections from the footings, just standing there looking and then saying it's fine. I can't go into the excavation to do my inspection. So if it's necessary, I can ask some of the guys on site, can you measure that? Can you take a piece of rebar and stick it here, right, Carlito?
Yeah. Stick it right there. I'm starting to like you on this second round.
Okay, so let's get into. We're on the first floor now. I guess tying in wood into concrete. What are you guys specifically looking for? You guys are looking for I guess moisture separation from concrete to sill plate.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's only certain stages that I'm required to inspect. That's not something I typically see. I don't really see sill gasket. One, it's hard to even see.
Yeah, you would come in at the excavation for footings, then you'd come in again at foundation.
Be there before backfill.
And then before backfill, because you want to make sure waterproofing's all done correctly.
Yeah, dam proofing. Yeah.
And then you come in after framing's done.
Yeah, and then typically I'll come in after the plumbing and HVAC and electrical is roughed in too.
Yeah, so all the mechanical at that point, sign off on that. Then you come back in at installation.
Yep.
Then you come back in after drywall.
Yeah, depending on the project. If there's fire separations required, I would check that out.
At that point.
But typically, if it's a new build and it's really far from the property lines, I wouldn't come and check the drywall, no.
And then you don't return until final occupancy where you come for the final assessment of everything.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, final. I mean, there's some things, sometimes people let the exterior go until after occupancy, but I mean, the house has to be generally sealed up. I can't give someone occupancy if there's a window missing or half the house isn't cladded, right?
I literally had an inspector come in where it was final occupancy.
You said it.
And all he cared about was turning on the faucets and taking a look at the P-trap. That's all he was fascinated by.
Well, I guess you had it easy. I know.
I was like open book. I was ready to take a look at everything, but he was just really want to make sure the flow was correctly on the faucet. Wanted to make sure that the P-traps were correct underneath the sink, and that was it. And I
Well,
was
it's
like,
definitely something for final plumbing.
that was a short one. I was like stunned how
It depends
short.
on the project. I mean, obviously, you know better than me. If it's a new house, there's lots of things to look for. Typically, there's a final for all the permits you have open. So HVAC, plumbing, drain, building. So I like to be able to do them all at the same time. It just saves everybody time. But sometimes people will come in and just do the HVAC because, hey, we finished the HVAC, but we still have a few vanities that are in back order. We haven't plumbed them in yet.
Is it true that the inspectors don't have to put any booties on, protective booties, to walk through a final
You're
home?
right. I like this one.
Because I was told by an inspector that they don't have to put the booties on, but they have to keep their safety boots on.
It depends on the municipality. It's still a construction site.
Yes, until they sign off on it.
Typically keep my boots on and for every inspection. I think some people's opposition with the booties is they don't know what kind of grip they're going to have. It sounds like it's, super safe and kind of a little ridiculous, but how's it going to look to the inspector's superiors when they call and say, hey, I tripped and fell because I was wearing booties or I wasn't wearing my boots at all?
That's true. How do you explain that?
I know it sounds like a pompous thing, but you're capable of protecting the site. If you don't want people walking on your new floor or your new stairs, you can have ram board or paper down protected that way. I can't speak for every municipality. There's nothing on paper that I know of that says
I was just
they
curious.
can't wear booties, but that would be my assumption why you're hearing that.
So
it is our duty for them to wear booties.
I like that. You got me thinking about booty.
Like
Right
booty
when you
call.
said that, when you said booty, I was
are
like,
you going to watch Booty Call tonight? Jamie Foxx, man.
I don't know why I just thought of the strip club. What would you really like to change that you've seen that you really think you need to change on minimum code? There's got to be things that you walk through the house and you go, man, they should have
That
changed
needs to change.
Yeah.
Lots of change
Like,
here.
I hate 6 mil plastic under framing. I'd rather see a styrofoam sill gasket.
I guess that's something that could be considered. There's a few things.
Just what would you like to see changed? You being in construction, being a carpenter, being on site, hearing people's opinions. There's got to be some things that need to change that are stupid minimum codes.
There's some codes around the stairs. There's a bit of confusion usually with contractors. You guys usually assume if there's a drop of of more than 24 inches, if it's less than 24 inches, you don't need a railing.
That's right.
Well, in a house, if you have interior stairs that are more than 2 risers, you need a railing.
More than 2 risers.
Yeah, more than 2 risers.
So that basically makes it 14 inches.
No, it can make it almost 15.
Yeah.
15. So 15 inches, you need a railing.
It depends because you can have higher steps, right? You could have 7 and
7
15.
and 7/8 or
Yeah. So you could have almost 2 steps in the situation you're talking about, where someone else might install 3 steps. If they have 3 steps, they would need a railing. So that's
So if it was 4 inch, because minimum is 4. The minimum rise is 4
on an interior,
and the maximum
on an
is
interior,
yes.
No way it's 4.
Minimum is 4
No
and
way.
height.
I'm gonna contest
height
that.
is 7 and 7/8.
Minimum. No way, man.
Max is 7 and 7/8. 4 is minimum.
4.
From what I see in my personal building code, the minimum for private stairs is 4 and 15/16. So
it went up 15/16.
So it's basically 5 inches.
So it's been
Yeah.
modified.
That's the minimum?
It says all steps, rise, private stairs, 125 millimeters. I have marked in pen 4 and 15/16. So if that's not the right conversion, I apologize.
I was
Oh,
always,
because you're on millimeters.
I had a carpenter. I mean, this was a long time ago.
I can't believe you're
I
right.
learned that. quick.
Holy
What the
cow.
hell is that supposed to mean? I'm right a lot of times. There's stuff I'm still learning.
That just makes no
And things are
sense, man.
still
Could-
change.
Could
And
you
this is-
imagine the run on that stairs if you were on a 10-foot ceiling? How many treads there would
That
be?
would be one long ass staircase.
Yeah, you go from the front of
But
the house
you
to the
could
back of the
really
house.
ski down there.
Yeah, I mean, it's closer to 5 inches, right? So-
You know what? You shouldn't make fun of people. They could have small legs and they need to like kind of lift themselves like that slowly.
yeah, it's possible.
Hey, boss, they plane.
I think we're
Imagine
eventually-
throwing someone down the stairs. You're going down these stairs.
Oh, can we get back on track, please?
Yeah, sorry.
I'm surprised. I learn something every day on these podcasts, man.
You know what? I built so many staircases inside and outside. Whenever we were on site, they always made me build a staircase.
What's the maximum? Because I
7
think
and
there's-
7/8.
No, the code is changing, right?
Yeah, that's the maximum. The code is changing in 2022. There's a bunch of changes coming for stairs in Ontario. Right now, again, I'm sorry, I don't have it memorized. Private stairs, the maximum rise is 200 millimeters, which I have written 7/7/8. I think might be 7/15/16.
And that's changing to what? Is that going over 8 now?
No,
can't.
because that would be harder to walk up. Right?
yeah.
No, the changes, I'd have to look those up. It's the run that's going to be changing to a much deeper run to make it safer for
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
It's
to
going to be
walk.
greater than 10 inches, I think.
Yeah, I can't. I have it here somewhere.
Yeah.
I'd have to look it up.
Yeah,
I
I always
remember
go,
my
I
stair
always
guy
go
talking
larger
about-
because my foot's so big. You know, they say about big feet, right, Manny?
Yeah, you put it in your mouth.
No, big toes.
Yeah, they're from what I understand, they're changing the minimum run for private stairs from 8.25 inches to 10 inches. So
8
that
and
would
a quarter is the minimum?
yeah for run, and they're changing that to 10 inches. So that would be the minimum. And
That
that's
makes sense.
2022, and it's based on a lot of studies they've done. People like a lot of accidents in homes are falls, and they're hoping to prevent.
Here's one for you. At the top of the stairs or the bottom of the stairs, it cannot. So at the bottom of the stairs, whatever the width of the staircase is, the door has to be from the front runner to the door, right? So if it's 36 wide, it has to be 36 inches to the door. But at the top of the stairs, what is the minimum requirement at the top of the stairs opening into the basement? Can you have it literally 8.25 away?
I don't know. You might stop me on the
Top of
spot.
the stairs?
Yeah, because I actually am quoting a job right now, and I wanted to move the door because it looks so
You
unsafe.
can't. You need a minimum of 3 feet. You need a proper landing on
No,
the top
at
or the
the
bottom.
top.
At the top or bottom.
I'm pretty sure the top is different.
You're going to put a door.
I have the inspector here, so I want to find out if this is true.
Well, unfortunately, I'm not the building code. I am an inspector, and I don't know everything. I'm sorry, I can't answer that on the spot. I'm pretty sure you need a landing at the top
Yeah.
and bottom of the stairs.
That's the reason behind it.
Like I get questions
How about
like
if
this
it's
all the time.
grandfathered in and the staircase hasn't moved?
You would go to part 11 and start looking in there. Part 11 talks about renovations, and there's exceptions like grandfathered type clauses for different things, and you could go through there and see
There
if
it is
anything applies.
again, man. Like on the last show, we were talking about sistering, and now we're talking about grandfathering. Why isn't it grandmothering?
Because grandmothers are cooking and grandfathers are building.
Here we go. And send your emails to Carlito
And I will accept them.
if you can find his email.
You know what? I think people are too worried about terms. I'm getting sick and tired of this crap. If it's grandfathered, it's grandfathered, and I'm cool with
You're
it.
telling
If you
me
don't
that
learn from your history, you're destined to repeat it.
you're saying
Yeah,
the
you don't
term
wanna-
grandfathered is grandfathered?
It's grandfathered in.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk
We gotta
about,
have some fun on this show.
Let's talk about what building codes matter. Which ones should these guys be paying attention to, including me and you, Joker?
I guess they all matter, but there's some stuff in here that there's only certain stages that I'm required to look at. The rest is on you guys.
Isn't that interesting? Doesn't that kind of keep you up at night, man, that you walk in at certain stages, you don't see everything. I don't know if I could become an inspector, man. I'd walk in and I probably would find so many things and it would bother me that it wasn't done this way. Or maybe I'd be too critical. I don't know.
Yeah, you could never be an inspector.
I don't know if I could because I don't do
You should
minimum.
just stay a custom builder and that's it.
Okay, so what matters in the building code outside of? I know that you talked about Part 9, which we learned a little bit on the last podcast. What's the difference between Part 9, Part 11, Part 12?
Sure. So, well, it really depends on what kind of construction you're doing. So when you go near again, I don't know the exact section. There's a section in the building code that talks about how you apply each section of the code. So it'll say application of parts 3, 4, 5, and 6, and it'll list a whole bunch of stuff of if your building falls in this section, you would use those to build. So part 9, generally group C, which is residential occupancies, group D, group E, group F, 2 and 3. I don't want to explain all that. For you guys are doing renovations, so and maybe some new builds, right? So part 9, that's what a residential house falls under. So you'd be dealing with part 9. Those are all the acceptable solutions for a part 9 building. Part 11, again, that's a different section that's, can be confusing. It deals with change of use, and there's some exceptions in there for different grandfathered or grandmothered things.
Well, it's going to be grandfathered for now until they change that.
So yeah, you guys would be dealing with part 9, part 11 a bit. On a newer build or additions, when you get into the energy efficiency stuff.
That's Part 12.
That's part 12, which
That's
basically...
a new division.
Part 12 is still in the volume 1, but it'll send you to SB 12, which is in volume 2, and that'll go through all of the energy efficiency requirements.
Solar panels, wind power.
No,
Nothing like that. It'll talk about the installation, the R value.
5-star.
No. Just it'll talk about the R value. Like if you pick a package for a new house, again, it's like it's an acceptable solution. So I'm picking package A1. It'll tell you how much R value you need in your walls, in your basement,
Your attic.
Yeah, your drain water heat recovery unit,
Systems.
continuous insulation. It'll tell you all that stuff. That's another section that is relevant to you. So, I mean, they're all important, but they are not applicable to every situation. So depends on what you're doing.
If I'm a homeowner,
Yeah.
I want to do more of my own footwork to figure these things out. How would I find out what packages I want if I didn't want to use a designer? Do I need to buy this book and then...
That's what he was just discussing. You can go through all these parts and it tells you that you can apply that part to your build and avoid...
In section 12.
In SB 12, there's
SB
different
12.
packages that they've basically put together that says these will meet the minimum requirements if you do all this. It'll talk about the efficiency of your furnace, the HRV, all that kind of stuff. So for a homeowner, I don't know if a homeowner is going to be able to just pick this book up and design and build their own home.
This is more for a contractor selling a job.
Yeah, I mean, that would be something you could definitely educate yourself on. I mean, you could build a car from, the ground up. It would be really hard to do it just by picking a book up and having no experience, right?
What's the fastest way to keep things moving with you?
With me.
What are the things that are slowing people down when you show up? Like when like a lot of times you'll show up and you're expecting things done. What are the things that you need to just keep doing to keep your project running?
Yeah, okay, good question. Well, for one, I show up way too often and they don't have the plans on site, which is
That's irritating because you don't remember every single structure.
Well, that's supposed to be in your
visit.
job box.
That's supposed to be on the site all the time.
Yeah, the building code actually requires that documentation to be on site all the time. The thing that bothers me, like on top of that, is they'll have the plans that the architect or designer sent them, but they don't have the stamps from the city. So I don't know for a fact that those are the drawings that the city reviewed, right? Maybe you made some changes. Maybe the foundation's a little wider. I don't know. It irritates me when I come to a site and they just have the plans the designer sent, not the plans that the city has looked at. Even though they may be the same, I don't know that just by looking at them.
So you'll come back when they call you and say, I have them.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell them, book another inspection and I'll see you later. I mean, funny thing is people will offer to send the plans to me like I don't have access to them.
I actually like that. Was a good one. That makes a lot of sense. I'll send it to you. Oh,
Yeah.
Dude, Where do you think I'm coming from?
Yeah. Hey, I have them on my phone. Let me email them to you. Like,
Yeah. How about I inconvenience you to convenience myself?
Yeah. So that's something that.
What else do you need from us contractors when you show up? Obviously drawings. What else? Let's hear some.
Aretha knew it.
What did she read?
Aretha Franklin knew it. A little respect.
Oh. Oh, that was a good one, man.
Yeah,
that went right over me.
I was picking up what you were throwing.
I know, he got it.
God,
He was a little slow in part two.
The plans on site, that's a big thing. I mean, sure, respect, but it's not a necessary thing. If you don't like me, I'm still supposed to be impartial and do my job. It shouldn't bother me, but who wants to work in some sort of uncomfortable, hostile
Nobody does.
environment, right? So that's, the plans, respect, sure. People make changes on site all the time and they don't run it by me or anybody. They'll change the layout of the foundation. And like
That's a big...
Yeah, it's a pretty big change. We're not talking about moving a closet. So sometimes people will make changes like that. They'll run it by their engineers and whatnot. And then they'll just say, yeah, here's the report. And I was like, well, again, this is where you come into different inspectors tackling things differently. For me, a big change like that needs to be reviewed. And I would like for the plans to reflect that change you've made. Like I mentioned before, the Building Code Act requires your plans to reflect what you're going to build.
When you review that, are you reviewing it or is your team reviewing it back at the office? Like your supervisor, your engineer at
It
the
depends
ministry?
again. Yeah, it depends again where you're working. If you have a big enough municipality and they have those different departments, somebody different may be looking at it, but I'm not looking at it on site because sometimes there's calculations. I got to dig through the code book. There might be zoning bylaw implications, right? That's another thing where people make big changes. They don't bother to make a phone call or an email at all. So it's a little frustrating because that slows the job down. And it's not my fault that you've changed something that wasn't on the plans, right? The issue though becomes where some people get a little more picky, like you move the closet here or the bathroom is over here. It's a little gray there. I guess that's where you kind of get into.
Yeah, but a foundation.
Okay, but I want to get back to section 9 again. Because
Part nine.
Part 9, not section 9. Part 9.
Please pretend to be a contractor.
Oh, God. So part 9, it allows us to be able to move structural. Did I misunderstand? An engineer said, like, if I wanted to move a beam under part 9, I wouldn't need to have it engineered.
I mean, it depends. Like I said, part 9, that section is in division B, which are acceptable solutions. So it is possible to move a beam or something without hiring an engineer.
But how does that affect you? I mean, with
it doesn't.
It
You've
doesn't really
designed
affect
it
me.
and-
They still have the cities will still require drawings. They'll still
So,
require.
and you'll still have to review it.
Yeah.
Look at it this way.
So how does that part 9 even work then?
Look at it this way. You walk into IKEA. I want to buy a house. Okay? I go to the part 9 section and I want a house that has a cantilever section in the back. Part 9 will make recommendations on what cantilevers you can use and to what lengths you can and how you can do that. You don't need an engineer for that. You just need part 9.
So
long
really,
as you choose one of those-
part 9 only cuts out the engineer.
Yes.
Well, it's not about cutting them out. It's just
Gives you options.
If we imposed every person to hire an engineer for every single job, again, that's added cost. I mean, engineers are.
But I still need a drawing from an architect, even if
No.
I'm making that change, no?
No, a homeowner can.
You can do it. You can buy an architect drawing online.
I have
then
pencil crayons and Crayolas.
You can if you want, and then you'll apply that part 9 to the drawings and you submit that to the city.
I'm not sure how. I haven't experienced that. I'm not sure how that one would work because
With the
there's
crayons?
Still, that's different. If you had a designer design it, like we'd still need their qualifications if they're required.
Yeah.
A homeowner could draw up their plans and submit them, and if everything's an acceptable solution, it meets the code. That's fine. It seems, from my experience and understanding, most, if not all, municipalities allow homeowners to do their own work.
And
like
that's
that.
usually only on like Tuesdays or Thursdays. What is it called? You can do that anytime, right?
No, it's
No,
Wednesdays.
it was fast tracking is only on Tuesdays and Thursdays,
Who told you that?
right? You could fast track at the city.
I'm not sure. We don't have fast track where I work. So if that's a
There used to be
There's
a
a
day
fast
we were
track submission process.
like now I pay my architect to do it all, so I don't go there anymore.
Wow,
But
you need to go do this and visit.
dude, I don't have enough time. I gotta build. I can't hire guys to do what I need to do half the time.
Mr. Smith mentioned earlier that he actually started looking into the inspection and code book because he wanted to make himself more valuable and have more knowledge.
Yeah, but I wasn't running running sites, right? Like I was still working for someone. You work for yourself, right? Yeah, I didn't have to deal with all the business stuff. I wasn't sitting up at night, doing quotes. I was an employee. I wasn't an employer.
How about chasing money?
Yeah, exactly. I never did that. My boss is, I never had to chase paychecks. So
I want to bring up a point. Mr. Smith, can you add all those tags to my book?
you know what?
That's the most organized building code book.
You know what? These tags, people listening can't see. I just have a whack load of tabs in my building code. Those are more for when I wrote exams, so it was easier to find. Those exams I mentioned, they're timed, like they're 3 hours if I'm not mistaken. Anytime you can save digging through the book, you can use that to better answer questions, right? So
Wow.
that's why they're all
There's a
there.
lot of questions there.
I know.
Yeah, again, it depends on what exam you're writing. Some stuff is not stuff I even really use in my job, but it's in the building code and they test you on it.
What would you like to change about construction?
That's a good question.
That's Carlito's go-to question.
Well, you guys might be able to answer this better
The
than me.
reason I'm asking is I want to change myself. So if
Yeah.
I can do these things, then-
What are people? Do people still think of contractors as sleazeballs?
Of course.
And,
yeah.
Of course they do.
Even you guys?
Of course they do.
I have a hard time hiring people. It's really bizarre that this podcast has actually introduced me to some really interesting people that actually care. Something I haven't been able to do in 30 years, I'm actually able to do now. I've created some friendships and some business relationships through this podcast, and they're actually really working well. The guys care, they have pride, they have the same vision. I don't have to chase them. I don't have to babysit them. Like it's something I'm not used to. This whole industry is changing for me through this podcast. It's like I'm just seeing a different perspective.
This
of
isn't about
construction.
you. The question wasn't about you.
Yeah, I know. I was just sharing
it.
it. I was just sharing it. Sorry.
I mean,
It's not group therapy.
I'm a little biased because I used to be a carpenter. So carpentry, I mean, there's so many different aspects. It's not a licensed trade, right? You don't have to have any ticket to do carpentry, like build a house or anything. I wish a lot of trades had maybe more respect, but the problem is there's still, and there were people who are taking people's money, doing shitty jobs. I don't know why construction, like how many other industries have that kind of
We're
view?
the only ones.
Yeah, it's so
But
weird.
we're also
like,
the only ones that are taken advantage of at the end as well, too.
yeah. So, I mean, it would be nice if,
Well, the food industry is a little bit like that.
It at the end?
No one wants to talk about it though.
What do you mean? In what way?
not on this podcast.
Yeah, we'll wait for the cooking network.
I wish that construction was maybe viewed as a bit more of a professional thing. I know it doesn't always appear that way from the outside.
I blame TV.
You know,
Carlito.
me and him are on two different pages. No,
I blame TV. TV has misrepresented the real construction industry.
I was brought up on television. I watched Bob Vila. I watched Yannick's.
Did you ever have the Carhartt tuxedo?
Oh yeah.
Oh, perfect.
I still have some. I just find them very hot, and I do not like farting in them.
TMI, man. TMI.
Yeah,
Lost the train?
Yeah, I did. There's just so much to think about it. It's like
When do we need a permit? I don't think we really answered this question. I get clients all the time. Do we really need a permit?
You're right,
Do we
Manny.
really need a permit?
Yeah,
Why do we need a permit? Do we need a permit? And I just tell them, listen, you move a wall, you move a sink, you need a permit.
That's good advice. Again, it's not that every municipality is different, but if you refer to the municipality that you're working in, who's issuing the permits, they typically, now everything's online, which is great. They'll have websites that'll say, you need a permit when you're doing this type of work. Some will even go as far to say you don't need a permit when you're doing this type of work. So
And what site would that be?
it would be the city site that you're working in.
Just Google
right?
it. Just
So-
Google whatever city you're in and just ask for the
No,
building.
that might be something I'll offer to my customers when I leave. I'll just say, hey, you know what? Maybe you should look at this website and see what you need permits for.
Yeah, I
And
mean, it would
don't
be-
take it from me. Read
Yeah.
it yourself.
It would probably be like the building department website of the city that you're working in. Oftentimes, I don't know, again, I can't speak for everybody. If you call them and say, I'm looking to do this kind of work, do I need a permit? Maybe they'll answer you. Sometimes they'll need to see drawings and whatnot. But most cities, if not all, will have a kind of guide. I mean, it is in the building code, but it mentions material alterations, right? Like, so I
Is
don't.
that what it says? Yeah, it says.
Yeah, it mentions material alterations.
Alterations.
So that's pretty vague. And I think that would be up to each municipality's discretion on how they kind of interpret that, right?
But then the other thing that you got to educate clients on is that you may not need a permit on certain things, but you may be infracting on zoning.
Yeah, that's right.
So you got to factor that is. And then also, depending on where you are in the city, conservation.
Yeah, and there's
right. Conservation.
historic-
I want to build a huge deck here, right, leading into the river. No, you can't really do that. So that's why there's all these different steps that you got to take care of.
Yeah, and it is a little confusing. And again, that's not to toot your guys' horns, but I mean that's usually why people are going to hire a contractor. Hopefully, they're looking into those things. They're kind of your liaison with the city to find out all that information. You're right. You don't need a permit to make your driveway wider, but the city that you're working in might need you to comply with zoning bylaws that say you can't make your driveway that wide. So there's
only so much green space. You have to follow that. If you're using interlock, you could make it
Well,
wider.
that's what I keep on saying. It's our job, and you
Yeah.
keep on saying that around time. But the thing is that I'm going to be installing a bunkie soon, and this bunkie is 106 square feet, which is under
10 square meters.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Is there plumbing in it?
there's no plumbing, only electrical.
Okay.
But it's all season.
Yep.
The homeowners were asking me, how close can we park it to the fence line, to a
Yeah.
property line?
Yeah.
That required a phone call to zoning.
Zoning, yeah.
So I had to speak to zoning based on the size of the unit, where it is, and exactly the address. And then he told me, yeah, you're allowed 1 foot away from the property line to park this. You can't go over 106
It
square
has to be
feet.
floating.
Yeah, it's going to be resting on piers, and that's it. But you can run a 30 amp tech cable to it to operate a HVAC unit that can go as low as minus 30 and as high as for AC or for heat,
So
right?
it could still be a bunkie so someone can stay warm.
Yeah, you can still live in it. You just don't have water. And now
if you
you
have
do
plumbing,
not
you need a
require a
permit.
permit. You only require an ESA permit.
And zoning approval.
Zoning approval. So now I look like a rock star because I made the phone call, got the right zone officer, spoke to him, and I just said at the end of the conversation, can you just forward me an email with our conversation? Which he did. I forwarded to the client, and they're like, wow, thank you for all this information. But that's our job.
Yeah, and you know what's funny
But
too?
that's not free either, though.
That's part that I did it to get the job, and I got the job.
Why are you talking like that?
Were you guys competing for the same job? What's
No,
going
he
on?
won it because he's not going to win. I'm going to be on a computer, and he's going to be in a payphone. Can I put another quarter?
No, it's a good,
he
it's a good point.
exaggerates.
I mean, and it's funny too because depending on who looks at your submission, maybe you didn't make that phone call and you're like, oh, let's get a permit, let's be safe, and the permit costs, I don't know, $500, we'll say.
Exactly.
And the city looks at it and it's like, yeah, okay, you don't need a permit, but I'll give you one. That might happen. They might say you don't need a permit and give it back to you, but if you didn't make that phone call, it's possible you would have had your clients pay some extra money.
Have the conversation
Yeah.
and just communicate. That's all
Communication's
I'm saying.
pretty important. I mean, I think we're all figuring that out slowly, but it's it's a big thing.
Boring BCA stuff. What's all this about? I don't understand what this
Oh,
is.
those are just Building Code Act references.
So Building Code Act references, right? So what are we
Yeah.
talking about here? No person shall construct or demolish a building or cause a building to be constructed or demolished unless a permit has been issued therefore by the chief building officer.
So that's a pretty common thing. So construct has a definition, demolish has a definition, building has a definition. That's obviously not in that sentence you read, but that's in the legislation. So going back to what you mentioned, that bunkie. If you're constructing, that's not considered a building basically under the Building Code Act because it's not over 10 square meters.
Correct.
So you don't actually need a permit. So yeah, that's just a common one. If I go to a site, somebody's poured footings and they don't have a permit, that's a reference I would put on my order to comply saying you performed construction and you didn't have a permit, so get a permit.
So with the building code and the Building Code Act, is there a situation for everything?
Oh,
A resolution for everything. So if someone wants to build something, there's a resolution for everything?
I can't imagine there's a resolution for everything though.
Like a scenario? No, there isn't?
Well,
Or
you'd
you
have
guys
to come up with something crazy. I mean, if I can't answer it, I'm sure it would be a discussion to be had. That's why there's different, like a hierarchy, inspectors, maybe there's seniors, managers, chief building officials. So hopefully with all that experience, you can come up with an answer on how to tackle a situation. But You'd have to think of something crazy.
Well, it's interesting that a lot of homes in Toronto area, because we're from Toronto, right? T-Dot 416.
I'm from the T-Dot.
I'm sure a lot of homeowners or people will drive around and they'll wonder, why are they spending so much time and effort and money on trying to save parts of this house? Why not just knock it down and build a new one?
Yeah.
The reality, though,
Is that their house isn't paid off and they can't they can't tear it down.
no. The reality is that if you do tear that down, then all of a sudden you're given a whole hit list of new zoning bylaws.
Yeah.
And I learned that really quickly, and that's why I'm asking about the resolution. I had a job in Bloor West Village where he wanted to rebuild a single car garage, was literally on the property line. Mm-hmm. Right. So we looked at the survey and then it was falling apart, this thing. I submitted to the city a request to find out what we can do or can't do. First, it was a permit request. Then it became a zoning request. And then we quickly learned that, yes, if you wanted to rebuild a new garage, you'd have to do the new zoning setbacks. If you were to do the zoning setbacks, it's a single car garage. So you'd have to move it. I think they were asking for 3 feet away from the property line. Garage would be jogged from the drive and you literally could not park the vehicle from the new zoning. What we figured out working with the zoning officer and the city is I could rebuild the garage,
Remove and replace it.
section by section, and leave it in the exact same spot. And that's exactly what I had to do. The homeowners asked me to submit a permit, just as you said, and we submitted one at the very beginning, but we got all these zoning bylaw issues.
Yep.
So we opted to go this other route. And I only bring it up now because I think it was 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I got a phone call from the city. I got a permit here. It's still open.
Oh my God. And
And
it's
I'm
up
like,
to you
it's
to
open.
close it.
Yeah. Well, they're asking me, it wasn't open. It's still application open.
Oh, I see.
Right. So because we never went forward with the permit because we couldn't, because it wasn't going to work. And so it was just interesting. I was like, what address is this? And they told me the address. And I'm like, holy cow, no, we actually opted not to go through a new garage and we rebuilt the garage instead in the exact same spot. And she goes, okay, so I just need verification from you in writing. Are we going to basically just forfeit this permit application? And I was like, yeah, basically that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, again, the zoning bylaws, those are set by different municipalities and they work together with the building code. I mean, I can't imagine there's any zoning bylaw that talks about the R value or how big a lintel needs to be. But you're right. If you have a reno that's going on in some places, if you demolish too much of the house, they're going to say, whoa, we need a new home permit here because you're not renovating. You're basically just trying to save enough to not have to get a new permit and apply new codes and things like that. So, but again, the city would deal with those kind of bylaws.
It's funny that you guys said that because I had a really rich customer and he said, I want you to tear my deck out. It was like a 50 or 60 linear feet deck. And he's like, just tear it down. And I'm like, you know what? We should really apply for a permit before we do this. And he's like, don't worry. I know everybody. I got lots of money. And I'm like, I tried to push for it. And he's like, just tear it down. And I was like, okay. Tore it down. We started building a new deck. He thought he was going to get the same size deck. The guy next door, he thought it was his buddy. Made a phone call. He got a 10 by 10 deck.
Yeah, I mean
and he lost this beautiful, huge deck that we could have just removed and replaced in pieces.
That's what happens. I mean, people see stuff going on. They call in and say, "Hey, I saw an issue over here. What am I supposed to do? Show up and turn a blind eye? I wouldn't be doing my job. The city wouldn't be, performing their duty."
You mentioned before, say nobody notices right now, and 5 or 10 years goes by, and then somebody overviews it on another part of the project of the house and they notice that was not existing, but a few years have gone by. Is it now grandfathered in?
Yeah, it depends. Again, I think
Could be grandmothered in.
grandmothered. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'd have to think about that. I believe it might be handled differently in different cities. I think that there is a section in the Building Code Act that talks about when an offense becomes known to like an inspector, and I think within a year of it becoming known, you can deal with it. So if I wanted to, I believe, and again, this isn't something I would just go and do. This is something I would verify with my superiors. But if I saw something like, hey, this bathroom's not on your plans, like what's it doing here? And it just came to my attention now, it is possible that we might go through the whole routine of getting a permit, having it inspected. Maybe there's Maybe the inspection stuff will go a little differently.
You mean not tearing the drywall or tiles off?
Well, again, it depends. Like, I'm going to be the one signing off on the permit if you're getting a permit, right? As far as I know, I don't take any personal liability, but I want to perform my job to the best of my abilities. If I don't ask anybody to take drywall down to see the vent pipes for that, the new toilet, new sink, I'm just assuming they're using the proper type of pipes, essentially. I can see that it functions properly through other tests, but I can't see the actual product they've used without taking the drywall off. Or, I don't know, maybe you have a different solution, but it really depends on the situation.
Is there a fine if you actually start construction before the permit is issued?
Like demolition, you mean?
Anything, if you start construction.
Again, that'd probably be on a city by city basis. What I do sometimes is if you've done construction without a permit, I'll issue an order to comply. And again, that's the official document. I'll say, hey, you've, as I mentioned, I think it's 8.1 of the Building Code Act. You're doing construction without a permit, get a permit. If you don't get that in a timely manner, I could send it to court and you could be paying essentially a fine on that.
And what is a fine like that?
I don't know. Yeah, sorry. I couldn't tell you.
What have you seen or heard in the rumor department?
Rumor. So I'll give you an example. It's specific to this example, so I don't know how much help it'll be. Somebody constructed a very large garage or shed in their backyard. It was about 20 by 30 feet. No permit. And it was about 18 feet tall. No permit.
Wow, that's a big garage.
Yeah, it was a big place. I went by, I left my card a few times. No one was home during the day. Asked for a phone call back, nothing. Issued an order, didn't hear anything. Sent another letter, hey, we're going to take you to court. Didn't hear anything. Then I sent it to the legal department and I served them in person and said, hey, here's your court date. See you later. And then that's when I finally started getting communication. When I talked to the prosecutor, again, this is specific to this example, they told me they would probably start at like 8 to 10,000, and then go up or down from there depending on their situation.
The penalty.
Or how the guy behaved with you guys.
Well, again, once I hand it over to the prosecutor, it's on them to. They must have some sort of typical penalty list for different situations, but they're the ones dealing with that matter. It's not up to me. I would just be called as a witness to say what happened was what happened, essentially. So that for that example, that's what I heard, but it varies. Like,
are they compliant? Like, are you forcing them to tear it down?
Again, it depends on the situation. I can't force anybody to tear anything down
Once it's built, even though it's...
I can't force them to tear it down. The court could if they don't want to comply. Like, all they'd have to do is get a permit. They wouldn't necessarily be complying with that specific order because the order says you did work without a permit. You can't undo that, right? They're likely still going to face a penalty even though they get a permit. The problem is, if you would have just got the permit, it's probably way cheaper than the penalty.
That just hurts that much more.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that happens. But yeah, that's an example. But I don't
they were
know.
just ignoring you, hoping that you would just go away in the beginning.
I guess so.
What made you notice it?
I had a complaint.
20 by 30 by 18 feet tall.
No, I know, but sometimes people don't say a word, man.
Ray Charles noticed it, man.
Did you talk to him?
Superpowers of inspectors. Let's talk about the superpowers of inspectors. Are they equivalent to the superpowers of contractors?
I don't know what superpowers you guys have.
We don't have any. That's the problem.
Then no, they're not equivalent. I'll tell you from the Building Code Act. Again, this is Ontario. Sorry for all you listeners out there that aren't from here.
Oh, this is the epicenter of construction.
That's right. And so powers of inspector in the Building Code Act. An inspector may require the production for inspection of documents or things, including drawings or specifications that may be relevant to the building or any part thereof. If I want some detail on, you're installing engineered floor joists and you've drilled a giant hole, please show me the specs from the manufacturer that tells me that hole is acceptable.
That's a good one. Yeah.
We just talked about that.
I know.
Yep. Another one, inspect, remove documents or things relevant to the building or part thereof for the purpose of making copies or extracts. Never taken things off site, like of any importance, maybe like a brick tie or something, but that's about it. What else we got here? Require information from any person concerning a matter related to a building or part thereof. Some of these are very vague, but...
Engineers?
I guess so. The other one that you'll probably laugh at, or is it? Oh, I can't find it here. I'm sorry.
I am curious to go back to the LVL. Is there a way you can drill a hole through it?
What's wrong with you, man?
Just asking.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, it depends on the manufacturer, right? Like, what is it, Weyerhaeuser, or I don't know how to say that word.
It's Weyerhaeuser.
Yeah, they have a spec book. It's not. It's over there. It'll kind of show what holes you can and can't drill. It'll show nailing patterns, but there's so many different scenarios. Like, typically, I'll ask people to bolt a 4-ply LVL, but there are situations where it's not required. So it depends on where it's loaded. If it's side loaded, if it's uniformly side loaded, or if it's just a central, like another beam coming into it, or if it's top loaded, those things change. So for that example, it depends on the manufacturer's specification.
Talking about that, what is your knowledge on packs? What's the amount of packs you can do? Like 4, 5, 6? What's the minimum and what's the max? I mean, what's the max? Sorry.
What's
Is
a
that,
pack?
like I've heard like if you're using spruce 2x12, you
Okay.
can only go 4.
Again, if you look in part 9, those are acceptable solutions. If you want to start dealing outside
You
this,
have to read the book.
I know. Now
you wanna
he's
start-
making me read a book.
if you want to start dealing with things like that, that's probably when your engineer would come into play. I know for the LVLs, I was just looking at it earlier, it says anything over 7 inches wide, then you're going to have to get some sort of structural design done. So I don't know how many plies that is. What is it?
That's 5.
5 plies? So, yeah. So
But that's LVL.
that's LVL. Yeah. That's specific.
I'm not talking about spruce.
Oh.
I'm talking about spruce 2x12.
Over
Yeah, so
7 inches.
again, so
that'd
it-
still be over 7.
That's just
5.
specific to that manufacturer.
Got it.
So if it's not in part 9, to the best of my knowledge, you'd have to have an engineer.
Like
apply-
that's the one
Or
question.
the
Yeah,
manufacturer.
I'm trying to figure that out because I keep having, like, we talked to engineers, but nobody actually gave me a direct answer on it. So I
don't know
guess
if there is an
guess
answer.
I'm left to reading this book.
I don't know if there is
Part
an answer
9.
in this book for you. It'll probably talk about 3 or 4 ply beams, but if it doesn't specify it in part 9 as an acceptable solution, you have to look elsewhere for some sort of solution that will be.
Can your penalties travel through the trades right into the GC, right into the corporation? Or is it just go strictly to the GC and the corporation?
Again, yeah, it depends on what the penalty is, but typically when I issue my orders to comply, they're to the homeowner, like their name will be on it. But that's not to say I couldn't give it to the contractor.
Is it the homeowner or is it the person who applied for the permit?
Typically, it's the homeowner. They're the ones, unfortunately,
Carrying the burden.
Yeah, they're the ones overseeing the whole job, even though they've hired people. They've hired somebody. I'm paying you to oversee the job, but I'm still kind of overseeing you.
That's going to put a little wrinkle in our relationship with the homeowner if they get an order.
Yeah, it can for sure. I mean, if you're the contractor and you do something wrong, and then the homeowner, without notice, just gets some orders saying there's a huge problem on the site, yeah, I would imagine that could put a damper on your relationship.
Well, I've had this many times. People say to me, I run into a problem and I go, yeah, I can't go any farther until we get this, rectified over here. And they'll be like, don't worry about it, just cover it up. And I'll be like, I can't do that. Who's liable for that? The homeowner.
I mean, realistically,
Like if I cover it up and I do what the homeowners asked me to do and I just cover it up to keep moving on because I got to pay I'm just making I got to pay my bills and I don't want to lose the job and I want it to keep moving. And is it on me or is it on the homeowner at that point? Because, that will be a conversation I will have with homeowners. I'll be like, hey, this isn't on me anymore. This is going to be on you.
Yeah, I mean, again, the situation may change, but it's hard to prove what contractor did what, when they're working inside someone's home. It's very easy to say that the homeowner, they should be aware of what's going on in their own home or property, right? So it's difficult from like a legal perspective to say Carlito did this work when I don't know for a fact that Carlito did this work, right?
So I take over another project for, say, 4 bad contractors that have come through and I miss something and you come on the project. Am I liable for the last 4 guys if I can't even prove that it was 4 other guys that did the job? Or is it the homeowner again?
Well, it depends on like what you mean by liable. So what do you mean by
Like
that?
if they've done some bad shoddy work and I'm just there doing some lipstick, am I liable in any which way?
Aesthetically, no, it doesn't
Well,
matter.
yeah.
Well, you're covering anything that you cover with drywall, automatically you're hiding it and covering it. So that means that the last guy covering it is actually responsible for it, is it not?
Depends on the situation. If I need to see something that you have covered up, I mean, that'll be between you and your client to figure out who's paying for it.
Just recently, I was spoken to several guys, and no one was giving out permits, and nobody was closing them up and allowing guys to go forward. And a lot of guys walked from jobs, and other guys finished these projects without permits. What's going to happen to this whole snowball of events that have happened in the last 6 months?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know how. It's hard.
Like, we have to deal with this. Like, there's been a lot of work that's been covered up that shouldn't have been covered up because people just wanted their homes back.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Again, it's hard to. It doesn't really matter to me who uncovers something. If I need to see it, the cost is going to ultimately come to the client or the homeowner, and then maybe they're going to go after that bad contractor. I've seen it before where someone does a whole bunch of work and then they peel out and they've left just a big shitstorm, right? It's hard for me to go after some guy who's, gone and...
Will you guys show, if I needed you to show up to court, would that be something I could subpoena you to testify that these are the things you saw in court?
If I'm being subpoenaed as like a private individual, or I can't imagine why I wouldn't, but I've never run into that situation.
Yeah, no, I was just asking for future reference.
I'm sure it comes up. I mean, but yeah, I'm sure it comes
there's
up.
just so many scenarios in construction. Like, I talk to people and I hear the craziest stories. So that's why I'm asking these crazy questions, right?
Yeah, no problem. No, it makes sense. I mean, I testify in court when I issue orders and people are getting penalized for that. I haven't run into it where somebody's suing someone else and I have to be a witness, but it makes sense. I could be a good witness for their case. Yeah.
Interesting.
You got a lot of contractors telling you how many houses they've built.
Yeah, it's great.
What they start telling you their CV, their resume, they start breaking it all down, going, by the way, do you realize what I've done?
Yeah, but that won't matter because if you do one wrong thing,
who cares?
It won't matter anymore.
I just posted a post this morning about it's not about how many years you've been doing it, it's about the work that you've been doing.
Yeah, you're totally right.
Yeah,
I told you this. I spent 15 years, my first 15 years in the business, I thought I was doing a damn great job. And then I realized that I'd never learned anything. I just kept doing the same thing over and over again. And eventually I needed to pick up a book and learn something.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, and I guess that's another thing, like another reason that it's good to have us come by. The problem is, well, not a problem, but not every bit of construction you do requires a permit. So I'm not always going to be there to be a second set of eyes. But yeah, I do have contractors mention to me that it's more times than not after I've raised an issue and say, hey, this isn't quite right. Oh, come on, buddy, I know what I'm doing. I built 30 houses, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't do anything for me. If anything, it's very off-putting. I've met one that I can think of, contractor who mentioned he's built tons and tons of houses and everything was like amazing. That was the only time. So it doesn't happen often, but they do mention it. Like, okay, I know what I'm doing. You can't be serious. This isn't an issue. I built this many houses. Come on. And I'm like, well, I don't care how many houses you've done. If you built them all wrong too, that sucks.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Sucks.
Here's a question for you, Mr. Smith. Have you gone down and inspected tract building subdivisions?
Small sections of it.
The reason I bring up the tract building is you guys can't inspect every single house. And I know I had a conversation with the GC about the heat recovery stack where he literally installed it in one house, had it inspected, and then he took it out to put it in the next house and had it inspected and kept on doing that.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Again, I can't speak for every
No, of course not. But
that sounds like more work than just leaving it in.
No, you have to purchase one for every single house. But there's no way that you guys, this goes back to there's too many homes to look at.
Yeah.
There's no way that you can go into a tract subdivision and inspect every single house.
Yeah. I've gone through some small subdivisions, like maybe 30 or 40 homes, but I've never personally been in one of like 200 or 300 homes. I suspect, and this is my opinion, it's possible they're not checking every single home as thoroughly as the next, because like you mentioned, you don't have the time.
No.
You go to a few and they look proper. The next few should probably be proper as well if it's the same builder. Again, I can't speak for all inspectors, but I'm assuming maybe that's the case. They'll pick some at random. It's just like if I was looking at the framing in a house, I might not necessarily look at every single joist hanger, but I'll look at, 10, I'll look at 20 on each floor. And the few I didn't see, I'm assuming they're nailed off just like the rest. That's possibly what's happening, but you're right. It's hard to expect one person or a few people to inspect 400 homes in a few days.
Once you get into the building department and you've passed all your exams, do they also teach you how to read people and bullshit detect kind of thing? So when you get on site and they're like,
I don't think it matters.
what do you mean?
The rules are the rules. It doesn't really matter what kind of personality
I know, but you don't
have.
but you don't think GCs will be like all of a sudden bullshitting their way trying to...
I don't know. I think it got his vibe. Like, when an inspector comes to my site, I would never say, this is how many houses I built. I would say,
that's a red flag.
Why are you making me do this? And how can I get around that? Like, I would rather deal with the fix than try to convince you of my credentials. Mm-hmm. I think that's a waste of time. You know?
I mean, no, there's no, that's more of a, personal skill learned through experience. Wasn't taught how to read people, but you quickly learn that if, you give a little, they take a lot, right?
I like.
That's true.
I could see Manny. Why don't you sit down a little bit, have some bread and some olive oil? Come on, sit with me.
You make it sound
I gave
like
you some sausage.
No, man, no. I've never bribed anybody because the work. Okay, I'll tell you.
Dude, if you've ever come to this guy's house or the houses he builds, he'll have a party once a month.
My first house that I built, I had this inspector that was like really, really quiet.
Okay,
just by the book, and I respected that, right? And I had never had any major issues with me. Tiny. Then the house is finishing, final walkthrough. This was the wood shower bathroom. So he's walking around, goes through the whole house, and comes across this bathroom that still to this day is my most favorite. I love this bathroom, this shower. It was made out of real wood, ash in the shower, right? Waterproof, fully waterproof. This guy walks by and stops and literally goes, "Holy cow!" And I'm like, I looked around going, what? He goes, fucking shower's beautiful.
No way. Really?
I was like, okay, I did a good job, right? I was really pleased because this guy was quiet by the book the whole time, right? So it was...
That's funny. Yeah, I mean,
I don't know what the point was.
No, that's okay.
You're talking about, you could have a professional guy for so many decades working with you, and then all of a sudden he appreciates something you do and you get a compliment.
Because you must walk in and all of a sudden see good, bad, ugly, great work, right?
Yeah, you were earlier talking about reading people. Yeah, I see lots of nice stuff and I see lots of bad stuff. Unfortunately, I don't inspect for workmanship. Again, if it overlaps,
a shame. That actually should be in the code.
Well, that's yeah.
You know what?
It
that
should
would fix
be.
a lot of shit.
But what's a good drywall job? What's the minimum?
Ask him.
Oh, you don't want to get into this with me.
But that's what I mean. If we asked you what is acceptable and I asked someone else what's acceptable, you're going to have two different answers. It's very hard to quantify or put on paper how good something should be done. Like paint me a picture of a house and you paint me a picture of a house and we'll compare them. And how do you say which one should be the one you go with?
I think it goes back to that question from that listener where he was asking about the point system with ESA.
Yeah.
I mean, ESA, you get electricians who do such great work that eventually ESA inspectors just phone it in.
Yeah.
They don't even arrive on site. They just go, okay, you are done? All right, great. All right, okay, here's the sticker. Mm-hmm. Passed.
I've seen that happen.
Never saw it. Never looked at it. Yeah. But based on the history of this
But why is it only with electricians, though?
They're
because that's the only place I've ever seen it, too.
The ESA, they're their own entity, man. They do whatever they want to do.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, it would be nice if there was some sort of ranking system, but I feel like you'd have to hire thousands of people to operate some sort of system like that, especially through the whole province. And
the city's got money.
No, they're spending money. That's a great idea, is becoming, starting a company that puts a pointage, like a percentage on makes points. There's 10 points for a bathroom, and these 10 points cover these 10 things.
What's my pointage this week?
Yeah, well, you got only 2. Why? Because there's no floor?
No, maybe you be the GC who arrives and you put stars on your shirts, okay?
Oh, yeah.
That's all. we could do that, you know.
And you get like scratch and sniff.
Yeah, that kind of thing. I think it's getting a little late. Well, you got any more questions or what?
No, I'm exhausted.
We touched upon everything, man. We touched upon a lot. This has been like the most, academic.
You know what this has done for me is it's made me realize that you guys are doing a great job. Keeping
Honestly,
the houses safe, keeping the houses
safe,
safe, educating the contractors. But really, there's nothing to worry about when you see an inspector. The only thing you should worry about is that you did your job right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think. I know you've built something, and for me to come in and say you made a mistake, it can hurt. But we're both working for the same thing, right? We both want to build a house that's safe and going to last a while, and hopefully.
And really, if you're one of those bad cowboys that has something to say about inspectors, you're probably not pulling a permit, so you're not going to see Mr. Smith.
Yeah.
So you're not even in this. You shouldn't even be even in this conversation.
Yeah.
Bon Jovi.
Dead or alive. No. I think this has been a great two podcasts. This has been really good. So
yeah, I feel like we could do 2 more.
Oh, this is like there's so much more, and I'm telling you, you should read that because I'm going to read that. I have it.
Yeah, I need to step away from my comfort of hiring or giving my work to, like, I just really focus on what I feel that I need to focus on, and I hire people to do the other things for me. Manny's very personal with everything in his projects.
I just want to know what's going on.
I know what's going on my projects, but there is a lot to learn. Bettering yourself and being sharper is definitely, I mean, this is what this is all about, right? I find that it's probably going to be a contest. Who's going to read this book first?
I don't think you're going to want to win that contest.
Yeah, but there'll be a test though. So you can say that you read it, but it's going to be a test.
Yeah, you're right.
I think bottom line is that all the contractors out there, they're ready to make that step where they're working with somebody and they want to go on their own and start. You'll be the go-to contact with the inspectors like yourself. Don't be afraid of these guys. Don't think that they're a-holes right from the get-go. They're there to inspect your work that you've done for the code compliances, not for necessarily the beauty of it, right? They'll still appreciate good quality work and a good clean job site and a well-managed job site. But, don't be negative. Don't be confrontational. Don't be,
Well, we all have a job.
Yeah.
And everybody has to do their job. But I think what I'm walking away with this is make sure you have your stamped drawings waiting for the inspector when he shows up. Make sure that the place is clean. Don't give him any booties because he's not going to put them on. And he's not going to eat sausage.
And have those drawings on site.
Yeah, that's a pretty easy one.
Have accessibility to sections of the house.
Yep.
Have the proper staircases.
Yeah,
that you
no
need
ladders.
and handrails.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And just be nice. Be courtesy. Just like be nice, man. Don't.
It's just, you know what? We should look at it as not as them being police or inspectors, just another trade doing something for us.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, ask me some questions. I might not always have time to answer every question. If it's, code specific, I might not answer it because you can hire a code consultant for that. But if you want to know, what's the next inspection stage, I should be able to tell you that, and we should be able to figure out how to get that inspection done.
Funny you bring that up because in about a month's time, we will have a code consultant on the podcast.
Ooh, they're going
Dum,
to know. They'll be more than me.
But I do have a very important question to ask you, Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Is your first name Will?
Will Smith.
No. Is there anything else you want to share, Mr. Smith, with our audience? Anything that we've covered a lot, man, but I know there's a lot more. But is there any final words?
Are there any hidden vehicles that we need to worry about?
No.
It depends on where.
No, is there something that you could just better a contractor with, like something that you could just leave them with?
I think educating yourself is important. Some people still use red tuck tape on their vapor barrier. I don't know why. Do you still do that?
I don't use vapor barrier.
Oh, okay.
I'm going cellulose and I'm going fabric.
No,
now.
I do because I still deal with.
You're supposed to use blue
repairing.
tuck tape now.
Yeah, it's been.
Yeah, but if you have red, you can still use it, can't you?
No.
You can't.
No.
So you can't use up your old stock?
The book.
No, that. So I forget the manufacturer. Is it can tape or something. The manufacturer, they put it on a bulletin in 2015
Why did they stop it?
because it was never tested for that purpose. It was never
Vapor permeable.
Okay, so
vapor.
this was a conversation we had one time when we did insulation. I was told by somebody in insurance, they said to me, I want you to double the red tape up to make up for...
What year?
Remember we were talking about
what
that?
decade was
No,
it?
I'm just curious. I mean, it might be something that...
I've never seen anybody do that. I don't see any reason for that to be acceptable because it's not an acceptable kind of product to use for that. So if you put 5 layers of an unacceptable product, it doesn't really make a difference.
Listen,
Okay, so
everyone that's listening,
walking away from this, get rid of your red tape.
No,
You can use it for tie par and stuff.
No, you still need the red tape because you have to repair your taillights.
Or you could use it in stucco.
The point is that it's great that you brought that up, is that the code is changing. There's always amendments coming in, and there are always better ways to build. But unfortunately, there's also like those heat recovery stack crap things that will eventually, I believe, be taken out, and something else will come in.
I really hope
crap-wise.
they get removed.
Right. But I mean, it won't happen unless we bark, and we need to bark, right?
How about if we stick together?
Yeah. Contractors, everybody work together to build better. So we want to thank you very much.
Thank you guys.
No, really appreciate you being on the show. It's been a really good show. Thank you so much, man, honestly. And guys, send out more questions because I'm sure we can do another follow-up and bring Mr. Will Smith back.
Yes.
You know, not the real Will Smith,
And
but
we'll get jiggy with it.
I was really looking forward to a top secret inspector on our show. We've never done like something.
What? We only know what he looks like.
Yeah, we only know.
That means we're in trouble now.
We're accessories.
We're witnesses. Uh-oh.
Did you say?
Get us out of here. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. This was an interesting 2 podcast. We talked a lot about inspection, building code, everything. I love this one, man. This was great. Get us out of here.
Straight out of TO. The 416.
Oh, and his Instagram handle is.
And he's got blue eyes.